different people and like.
Sarah, take a step to your right.
I know. I just am fucking dying.
I'm really content.
Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Thank you.
Start 8.
Oh shit! I just knocked the thing over.
2 minutes. That light's
Oh.
not even plugged in.
2 minuti.
Well, it was on a second ago. I will not let the dogs out. Don't worry.
Time for a delicious.
Okay. Will you tell him
Rollins.
the light is now off? Will somebody tell him that?
It's on, off. And on and off. It just flashed.
I knocked it over in trying to get away from the fucking like mother of dragons heat I was experiencing. Okay, great. I'm like fucking. I'm dying. I'm fucking dying. I mean, I'm pretty naked right now. How many? How many minutes? 1-ish minutes. Is this a deal?
We're told. Okay.
Okay, great. Then I definitely don't care if you don't. What am I saying? We're talking about an auction. We're gonna auction. It's a Dove project. We got Snapdragon Dash, not Slash, but a fat Dash. 2020 writer, storyteller, baker, our own copycat. 27 seconds. 20. It's hot. Finally, I'm like, I get why Adam has his shirt off. Hi. I got caught mid-sentence, didn't I? I was just saying that now I understand why Adam always has his shirt off, because it is hot next to this fire. That means if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen or take your shirt off and continue. So you know who we have tonight. It's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. Who it's appropriate for, which is a lot of people because we all mother somebody. So thank you everyone for everything that you do. We are here again at the Campfire Sessions. Happy Sunday. It's another 80-degree beautiful day on Vashon. And we have Adam Cohn on here this evening. He is a writer, a storyteller. He is a baker. He is Papa Cat himself. And he and Megan are going to be auctioning off a cake this evening. And you can participate, bid on this cake, and all of the proceeds will go to the Dove Project. This is a very worthwhile charity, as all of you know. I don't know if you've ever had one of their cakes before, but this is not a normal store-bought cake. This is a giant fresh berry, mascarpone, beautiful layers of love and amazingness in this cake. I'm not a huge cake person. I really enjoy like a tres leche or maybe a cake with ice cream because it's too dry for me. But one of my favorite things about this cake is that it's so moist and delicious. And the icing is amazing and homemade. I'm telling you, this is amazing cake. Also, you're benefiting the Dove Project. So please, we're gonna start the bidding as soon as I get finished and run to the house and get back on the computer. But I want to welcome Adam Cohn this evening. He is going to be putting into words how we all feel on this Mother's Day and more. So welcome to the Campfire, Adam Cohn.
Wow, what a really beautiful intro there. Thank you, Miss Howard. Gosh, you really talk about cakes in a nice way. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. It is beautiful, as Sarah pointed out, and it's a lovely evening. And the Scotch broom, which my own mother would literally cry over with her hay fever, is in full bloom all around us in this lovely farm where we are at our campfire session. There are so many people I would like to have given a hug to today. Grab or kiss or touch, even just the edge of their pinky finger. And as our own cafe opened for the first time in nearly 2 months to receive visitors and friendly pastry goers this morning from 10 to 3, it was really lovely to see so many special faces and people that we have missed dearly for literally months. We just didn't see it coming. So thank you so much for coming out today. Things continue, and we continue to stay at home, and we continue to be oddly isolated. And I feel that our patience, at least I know our own, my wife Megan's and myself, is wearing thin. I want to see people, and I want to go to events. I want to, I'd like to just go out for dinner, for God's sakes. But rather, instead, we continue to or rather my wife continues to make beautiful dishes at home, and around the myriad house projects that are now running out, including the giant Snapdragon remodel, it feels a little bit crazy because we're still apart. Travel, really in any sense of the word, is in any capacity, is still kind of, there's a tightened grip around it, and there's really not really travel kind of allowed. That's a pretty big thing for many people, be it another city or even further, as often we like to travel to, to Ireland quite a bit, as well as to Italy. And there's special people and friends and children for sure that we're used to, or we're accustomed rather to visiting at a certain time of year, be it autumn, maybe when the busy summer, Snapdragon season's over, and we can finally get on a plane and just kind of melt on the floor until we get to Italy, or in the kind of cooler times, like visiting Ireland. I'd like to think about that, and I have a few kind of special poems or stories that kind of center around travel, or the idea of things on this Sunday and this Mother's Day. I didn't quite put it together when it was when I was told, "Oh, you're reading on May 10th," and I said, "Okay, that's fine. That's a Sunday. That's cool." But then I put it together that it was Mother's Day, and what a great, of course, usually in the past, we would have some kind of like Easter, like an important event, like a brunch. But I thought so much about people, and I write so much about my mother's family, and the people, my grandmother that I grew up with. But so tonight I have a piece related to my other grandmother, my father's mother. Her name is Grandmother Sophie, and I'm pretty excited about that because it's a new kind of direction, and in the process of that, it was kind of a conversation to myself about, well, how did we get there? We were living in Seattle, and we travel, pretty much only to South Dakota. There's some excited geese over there, and but anyway, that's coming. I'd like to begin with a little piece on Ireland, and as I lean into the mic, and about Ireland. Ireland is fantastically beautiful, and as it turns out, it's fantastically cold as well. Weather-wise, warm. The warmth of the spirit is enormous. But I have a short poem that is about kind of reconciling that climate and understanding understanding Ireland a little bit for what it is and the beauty that is within those rainy skies and the charm. And so, because we miss travel, I will give one modest word, kind of a description or glossary. The poem begins with the word rondini, which is the Italian word for barn swallow or swallow, like the bird that kind of careens in the sky, in singular and plural together. So rondini is barn swallow. And this is my a poem about Ireland and kind of understanding what it is to be there, happy even in the rain. Rondini, the flat slate gray of Lake Urlar. House martin, swallow, barn swallow. It is completely silent here, save for the mechanical ambling of farm equipment some distance away. Wetland, cottonwood, an occasional bright yellow of tansy through the muted greens of early August. Himalayan blackberry and soft fireweed break up the fields and climb over the collected stones and ravine that delineate one farm, one property from another. Freshwater shoreline and milky swamp green, small bird and cow's friendly call across the water. Dogs, tractor, again quiet wave. It is here the fields merge with one another, converging lakeside in the shallows, dark reeds and primordial silt. The agricultural flies are resourceful and garner my attention in their repeated efforts to land in or on my nose and face. Only the steady rain and constant walking defeat their earnest visits. The way home is slow, wet asphalt, and the dry, warm, russet pink of heather. Like large patches of wild thyme, soft-hued rose and brown-green that ring Lake Urlar and balance the gray sky that I've come to know as Ireland. Gentle cows now rest under stand of hawthorn, creamy tan and white. They swish their tails and chew the afternoon away. Ah, Irlanda, the rains of summer, tranquil again, fireweed, dark pink. It is indeed a good summer to be. Ireland. Like I mentioned before, it's beautiful and it's rainy, and that's great. But it's not great if you're from somewhere that like here that is rainy. And so on an August anniversary, I remember we traveled all the way there to this funny little town and beautiful places, and it fucking rained the whole time. And I was so bummed out because we got married in August 5th, and so a lovely time in Vashon, and everything's perfect, and you can go to Docton and jump in the water, and so it was a little bit. I had to just take this walk and kind of like think about quietly from our house, kind of walking out to this old lake, this beautiful lake, and see that there's something different than 80 degrees days, but it's a great place to be. Ireland is. I was mentioning that I read a lot about my mother's family and the people that I grew up closely with. That is true. My father's mother, my grandma Sophie, lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Pretty much all of my relatives were, South Dakota centric. And so when I was small, like little guy, like 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever, 14, we would make pilgrimages to South Dakota. And being individuals, as I've written in other essays that you may have heard, that we traveled around in cars with maybe no mufflers or possibly failing transmissions, things that got us where we wanted to go, but maybe you're not going to get on the interstate, right? We would travel pretty much exclusively by Greyhound bus, and within that, we would travel across the mountains and in the direction east to Sioux Falls. Sometimes further, sometimes Chicago, sometimes New York. New York is almost 4 days by Greyhound bus. And with a family of 6 and like there's a newborn infant, that's really a marvelous accomplishment for any parent. I just want to say kudos to that Mother's Day. Like that's. So in my thoughts about my grandmother Sophia, I realized that it's a special essay that's coming to write about her. But I realized that there is a bus, there's a trip in order to get there that really needs to be noted because it was a giant endeavor. My family, my 2 younger brothers, a young infant one, and one a few years younger than myself, maybe 8, 7, to get there. And so this essay, a little bit longer than most, because I'm not sure about my time frame, is called The Bus Trip. And I think you're going to enjoy it. It takes the better part of 2 days to reach Sioux Falls by Greyhound bus from Seattle. When I was little, this is how my family traveled to visit relatives and friends, people missed and who themselves did not travel. As a young person, the bus was intriguing, and I was excited as I packed my clear plastic shopping bag. Bright orange and red plastic flowers printed along its sides, and red nylon handles as well. You might know those bags. They were clear, they were all different colors. King Tutankhamun had made his first excursion to America the summer before. He arrived, gold mask and canopic jars intact, to Seattle, and we visited him, our family, at the Modern Art Pavilion at Seattle Center. Later the same year, we saw him again in the much larger galleries of the Art Institute in Chicago, on another bus trip to see my father's brother, my Uncle Chuck, and his wife Evelyn. I liked Chicago, and the historical show had a huge impact on my then 10-year-old self. So much so that if asked what interested me, I would answer with confidence, Egyptology, pause, and finish with Middle Kingdom pharaohs. This answer would usually be met with a blank expression by the adults who quizzed me, and I would be left again, alone, to my tablet of blank paper, my magic markers, and books on ancient kingdoms and Nile River Delta culture. This being said, my own plastic shopping bag was well stocked with peanut M&Ms, my favorite food, and books on Egypt, including my favorite, a volume on mummification called Wrapped for Eternity. I was ready to go. The bus left in the evening from Seattle, and the station itself, like many in other cities, was a dark place to negotiate. At the time of these family trips, Burger King held the position of being the only place to eat, aside from the vending machines near the arcade and the lineup of molded black fiberglass chairs that held individual televisions one could pay for with quarters and spend a luxurious 15 or so minutes watching grainy black and white episodes of Laverne and Shirley, or maybe Happy Days. When the time ran out, the TV simply went dark, and then, with little left to do but wait, it was common to stand as discreetly as one could behind others watching shows, at least close enough to hear the audio and canned laughter present within the situation comedy. Hamburgers eaten, and hamburger and fries eaten, Cokes drank, and finally it is time to board. Long, sleek machines with silver dogs painted on either side. The buses stand tall and are lit softly on the interior with blue guide lights that illuminate the rubberized corridor to the back, or rather, the rear of the coach. This sentence, the rear of the coach, will be heard many times over the bus's intercom from the driver. All the way over the mountains, all the way to Spokane, Idaho, and well into Butte, Montana. The intercom will direct travelers to use the facilities, the unfortunate toilet located to the rear of the coach. In addition, smoking of cigarettes shall be confined, another good sentence used by the driver, to the last 3 rows of seats. These 5 or 6 seats, set near each other and directly in front of the mobile latrine, were in theory equipped with ventilating fans, which pulled the cigarette smoke up and away and replaced the carcinogenous air with fresher scented clean air. It is important to note these built-in smoke lighters almost always were not operational, either jammed or simply worn out, leaving the buses to smell strongly of cigarette, as well as the strong blue liquid that resided under the toilet lid nearby. The geese like that. And of course, the general and often gamey scent of all passengers and their belongings, ourselves included. It's not often you get to read with geese. It's really nice. Seated somewhere in the relative safety of the bus's middle non-smoking interior, I contented myself near my family, reading quietly about Mesopotamia and cuneiform writing, all the while enjoying generous amounts of Cheez-Its and M&Ms and mini cans of Coca-Cola, the half-size can, bought special for this bus trip. America and the golden west on view outside the giant tinted windows. It is an odd sensation to fall asleep in public, in all of one's clothes and shoes, perhaps a coat for a blanket. There is something pleasantly reassuring and hard to articulate here in words. Shared rest, sleep that is, among humans and animals, be it at a campsite or airplane or even bus. We wake to a new landscape. All of us, that is, except my mother. Happy Mother's Day. All of those except my mother, who understandably has been awake all night during the bus's many late night stops, making sure that myself and my 2 younger brothers are safe. My father is fast asleep, however, head down, with a copy of Richard Adams' Watership Down open on his lap. I can see blue Bic pen marks he has made on his palm and up the inside of his arm when space ran out within the worn margins of his book in hand. Notes, ideas, poems that later I would come to understand as structurally very similar to my own. Ideas relating to color and nature and natural imagery Though even early on, my own work would be often caught within the nostalgia surrounding personal history and the people, events that comprise those moments. Some kind of ardent documentation of sorts, of places and or people who aren't here anymore. This idea fascinated me always, and I would so often be caught trying to remember these moments in time. I still am. The Little Mouse in Leo Liani's colorful book, Frederick, a story of a field mouse who, though not readily preparing for the coming winter, though not saving grain and seeds to eat when there is snow and cold, was instead collecting visions of color, yellow gold sun, warm greens and reds, blues of sky to share with his mouse family when color and warmth of sun is scarce or not at all. This book and creature still best describes what it is to know my father, who ironically is also named Fred, like the poet field mouse he reminds me of. The tall forests of Douglas fir and the Northwest are replaced by white pine and eventually ponderosa pine. Large spaces of uninterrupted prairie and blue mountains on a far range that is Montana. The bus at some point in the night changed drivers. There are still the generalized commands and regulatory monologues, but now the accent is Southern, at least to my ears. And the driver is dark in color. He is jovial, and I can hear laughter from the front of the coach, a place, these first few rows, where the seats are reserved for elderly passengers, as well as riders who may be handicapped, either physically or, as sometimes the case may be, mentally different from ourselves. Older women, spinsters, my mother calls them, occupy the driver's attention as we continue on into the Badlands of South Dakota. Although the bus is cool, its air-conditioned interior is quite different than the blast of heat and exhaust that comes when the front door is opened. We file out, as with everyone else, and the driver gives us a generous warning that the bus will depart this cafe in 30 minutes. No more, no less. If you are not on the coach at that time, he adds, then I guess I'll see you the next day, this time then. He laughs again to himself and, lighting a fresh cigarette, steps back from the morning heat into the glass lobby of the diner we are parked in front of. We should be in Sioux Falls by late afternoon, I hear him declare to one of the other passengers, also smoking in the entryway. Yep, just in time for the heat to break at evening. My brother Aaron and I hurry past and into the cooled interior of the building, looking for something sweet to eat for breakfast. A tall, cylindrical case stands near the front of the entry, near the cash register and cigarette machine. Its mirrored interior is illuminated with fluorescent tubing, casting harsh white light on pies of all kinds displayed prominently on the circular shelves. Every 30 seconds or so, a mechanism within the case engages, and the pies rotate, their shelves, that is, a quarter turn. It's like the Space Needle, I tell my brother. You know, the restaurant at the top. It turns like that. My brother is small, however, and doesn't make the connection to the rotating restaurant I'm speaking of. Instead, his mind is fixed upon the immediate procurement of blueberry pie, cut in slices and displayed on individual styrofoam plates from within the case. Each plate tightly, excruciatingly wrapped with generous saran wrap, gelatinous blueberries oozing out of the sides. I'm reminded for a moment of my favorite book, the one I keep rereading, Wrapped for Eternity, A Pharaoh's Journey to Heaven, and can't help thinking of the pies wrapped in the case before me. The lobby, the bathrooms, the dining area, all of it smells like air-conditioned smoke, and we feel better outside. I crouch alongside my brother in the hot shade of the diner's wide, modern eaves and nestled against the false lava rock exterior, we devour our pies respectively. I have chosen cherry pie, and I am disappointed. The flavor is sour and not as sweet as I had hoped. I try repeatedly to trade with Aaron, who ordered the blueberry, and seems to be quite happy with his decision. He won't trade, and I am aggravated, eating my sour cherry pie begrudgingly and watching the unusual collection of humanity begin to board the coach for departure. The driver arrives, whistles loudly, bringing both hands to his mouth, and whistles again. All aboard! Everybody aboard! In his accent, so very different from where we are from. The bus feels cool, and I am glad for this, and the tinted windows, again, are easier on my eyes. The world outside the coach, the diner, and the parking lot, now a soft, muted green, like in a film, or in a dream in a film. Before the front door is closed, the driver walks down the row of seats and, counting heads, uses his fingers to point and pass each respective seat and its occupants. 2, 4, 6, 8. His numbers come out of his mouth slow and regulated, and I know that he has done this task 1,000 times, maybe more. At last, every passenger accounted for. The bus lurches back into the traffic and onto the dusty highway. The badlands and scrub brush, sagebrush, gently toss about roadside in the dry heat of the morning. Before long, the engine's drone makes me fall asleep as well. And I think to myself, wonder where all the trees are here. And buffalo, where are the buffalo? And I'm asleep. I am shaken gently awake by the arm and shoulder. Wake up, Adam. And it's my mother's voice. We're here. It is by now late afternoon, or perhaps even later. The bus's engine is quiet, and passengers, many of whom my mom has gotten to know personally, are disembarking the coach. My large family is waiting for everyone else to depart before organizing ourselves enough to leave as well. It feels like everyone who passes us gives my mother a personal farewell. In fact, some pass her small pieces of paper, addresses, I believe. It makes me feel good to know that these people are warm to her. And she will in fact stay in touch, as she may, with only letters or perhaps occasional phone calls, with some of those she has met for years to come. Perhaps she still does. I wouldn't be surprised. The lobby of the Sioux Falls bus station is much smaller and less scary than ours at home. Though not equipped with a cafe or even a pinball machine, the waiting lobby has instead cordoned off a generous area, 3 open rooms that greet those arriving to the city with full-scale dioramas of the Dakota Prairie, as well as fine examples of taxidermied wild creatures that reside there. Leaning against the railing, we can see gopher, deer, elk, rabbit, and prairie dogs, all in realistic poses. A still life of sorts, complete with a realistic painted background of the wide open prairie. In the last window, several grouse are disrupted by a would-be pioneer family's covered wagon. In the grove of birch trees, just out of view of the startled birds, a wax figure of an American Indian in traditional dress peers out at the unsuspecting family through plastic leaves. His face is stern, and he shades his concerned eyes dramatically with one hand for a better view. The pioneer family, wax figures who look much like myself, never even knew he was there. And so it is, we are all here, and waiting patiently as 3 young boys are able, our plastic shopping bags in hand. Soon Aunt Josephine, Aunt Mary, Aunt Sarah, and perhaps even my father's mother, Grandma Sophie herself, will arrive and deliver us back to her little house where we will stay. Looking back, I can write about, remember well, so many of the people, relatives, and places I would have otherwise not have gotten an opportunity to know without these regular bus trips. I still wish, of course, that I could visit Space Mountain and the magical kingdoms that are unique to California, and perhaps I will someday. But to recall the taste of strawberry shortcake in the warm, humid evening of great-grandparents' wooden porch, lemonade, cousins, and the sound of warm family voices from within the old farmhouse is an irreplaceable gift, and certainly worthy of the bus trip that brought us here together. Thank you. So that's a little bit of travel into South Dakota. For any of you that know that kind of travel, it's a big project, and it's certainly a giant project with children, and so making sure everybody's okay. And it's funny, as travel and things kind of change, and the homogenization of culture, and that these places, these diners and unusual kind of spots from region to region and from city to city would be wildly different, and even the food itself would be quite varied, and it was special. People ask me, sometimes there's the excitement around, let's take a road trip or a car trip or whatever it is, an American car trip, and I never want to have like a biased or a not enthusiastic return, but it seems that in the times that I have, like since I've been a grown-up, traveled in any kind of distance across, this great, large country that we reside in, it's an aggravating situation to travel 9 hours, in the sort of humbling position that is a vehicle and driving there, only to arrive at another Wendy's or another spot where the food and maybe even the ideas or the way things look are kind of the same. Not that I'm down on that, but it would be nice if we went to a new state and saw something different than a giant Conoco or a Sinclair station, and that's kind of what a little bit about that bus trip is about. Is that there was a kind of a special point when people were still getting around in a humble manner, because it was very cheap to travel. I think you could go to fucking New York City for $65, up until I was like 20 years old, and you meet a lot of interesting things and people rather along the way. Holidays and time like this are kind of an interesting point of reflection, and I don't know how long. I know as I'm reading that some of the stuff is a little bit longer, and I wanted to say that there's an interlude or a spot. I have a short poem for a friend who isn't here anymore, and as I said, I'm ridiculously nostalgic and talk about shit like this, and that's valuable to me. But a friend who was also a baker and a cook and an artist, a beautiful woman named Susan Jane Russell. She was someone who I kind of became friends with in a funny way. Like years ago, and a girlfriend I had years ago, this person, Susan, with her bright red hair and crazy wild antics, kind of a Lucille Ball, but her own version of this, this person was my girlfriend's mother's best friend, someone that grew up in Colfax, Washington, kind of a crazy little town. And then then went off and did and taught public art education in Everett for many, many years, like 30 years, before retiring with her husband Falcon, and traveled, and then later resided in Portland, Oregon with their grandchildren and family. She passed away, is it 3 years ago now, on Mother's Day, and I can't help but, she's in my head. And she would arrive, and she had one of those new Volkswagen Beetles that, baby boomer people are excited about, and loved it. And it was a chartreuse version. It had a crazy, crazy, whatever, I don't know, a vase for a flower. She always had a Gerber daisy, not a fake one, but a real one. And in it, and she'd drive around, and she'd drive up, and she would always visit my my baking jobs early in the morning, like before. She goes, "When are the owners there? When is the when can I come and nobody's there? I can help you. And for years, she would arrive in Eastern Washington, in Seattle, and all these places at odd hours of the day, 3 a.m. or 4:30 a.m., anytime when there wasn't somebody else. And she'd make blueberry muffins and help me with little things. But what she really would do is maybe like myself, she herself was a storyteller. And she loved the human condition and had such a great sense of humor. And when she passed away 3 years ago of a pretty vigorous pancreatic cancer that came in quick and ended things fast, it was a real change for myself. I had, and also my wife Megan loved her and miss greatly her quiet documentation of my baking career, humble be it. She always had great words to say and loved the Snapdragon and loved World Pizza. And so for Susan, I have a short poem, and it relates to where she grew up in the wheat fields in Eastern Washington. So a poem for my friend. We pick end-of-season raspberries together by moonlight. The air is cool, and the sharp, warm scent of wheat, just now turning gold, is intoxicating. It is summer. And that's a special poem for her. She'd arrive sometimes, towards the evening or any time in funny little cabins or places I was renting. And one evening there was a big sort of August moon rising in the Palouse Hills. When there was in the Palouse, which is a rolling sort of hilly country, it looks a lot like the Shire, I guess, which is sort of a great place to think about living. The moon rises high, and those kind of things are prominent in Coyote. And she'd arrive in her ridiculous Volkswagen, and she'd say, "Look, all these raspberries are here, and it's still warm out." And we'd often be outside talking, and I still smoked cigarettes then, and smoke and have a glass of wine and pick raspberries. And anyway, that's about her. So happy Mother's Day, Susan. I was at work today, and I was thinking about my essay about the bus trip, and about the unfortunate toilet and the blue liquid and the weird, the odd way it was to sort of travel, but with gracefully travel, and I was thinking about other times, kind of like a little bit later, and unfortunate bathroom experiences, and just because it kind of came into my mind. And the Snapdragon reopened this morning, and very, very early in the morning, my friend Chris and I were baking, and on the Pandora station, I don't know what it was, but a Tracy Chapman song came on, her, one of her big hits, from about a fast car and a ticket to anywhere, and there's a time or a story attached to a little bit later in my life when I'm still a teenager, just barely, and I'm working downtown, but it lodged a memory the way songs sometimes can. And after baking and working this afternoon, I was able to go home and quietly kind of pull this together, because it's been in my head before, but then it disappears and comes back the way, like, kind of haunted, the way, like, when you think about friends from the past and people that you might have known. So although this might be a little bit rough, I thought it was maybe a here goes, because there's good endorphins attached to reading a first draft in real time without that much proofing. So bear with me. In 1988, late summer, Tracy Chapman, the recording artist, was a huge sensation. I knew this in part because of the radio, of course, but also there was a tape player in the back grill area of the McDonald's downtown where I worked. Coleman Dock in Seattle had undergone a lot of changes. In fact, the whole of the waterfront is unrecognizable to what I might have known growing up. Yet nestled in below the ferry and located under what would be the passenger ramp, in the old Crab Pot location, for anybody that knew that time in the world, the old Crab Pot was a kind of a crazy spot where you go. There was a giant spider crab outside on a sign, and ne'er-do-wells would collect under there. It was sort of like a fancy location, but we didn't eat crab, so we never went there, my family. There was a McDonald's here, a McDonald's restaurant for many years. It's a funny memory trigger that is music, like olfactory sensations. Music can deliver us to places far in memory. I believe that taste is like this as well. In fact, I know it is. So I'm working here and making countless hamburgers, cheeseburgers, Big Macs, all through that summer. And the grill staff, all of them, people a little bit older than myself, they just can't get enough of this Miss Chapman album with the fast car song and a ticket to anywhere. Like clockwork, it would be played, rewound, played again, over and over the course of any given shift. It was quite a special thing to have a tape recording player in the grill area. I mean, someone must not be following the rules, right, for us to have not canned music. This music played for hours without interruption, save that of the myriad buzzers and timers going off and directing us as grill workers to pull or turn or flip any number of frozen patties. At 19 years of age, I have a lot of energy and believe myself to be a good worker. And yet, without fail, there is something foul to clean up in the lobby. The store manager would single me out to deal with it. The waterfront at this time, in the dark recesses of the Viaduct and Pioneer Square, were rougher than they are today. Homeless and those with acute mental illness would collect in the McDonald's lobby, often asking for ice water or scrambling for enough change to purchase a coffee, something, anything to make themselves still a participant in the world around us. Unfortunately, the restrooms received heavy use and doubled as cleanup stations. In addition to relieving self of necessary fluids, many times visitors to these facilities would also take drugs, naturally. And in the false privacy of the room, they would often have complex reactions to whatever they had taken and would throw up on the floor, or as sometimes was the case if the stalls were full, in the open urinal. It is hard to find words to adequately convey the overwhelming vomit response I myself had at the wheeling into the public restroom, a fresh, hot, Pine Sol sanitized mop and bucket, and the subsequent laborious cleanup with gloves of someone's regurgitated interior. And so there was finally that day when, after already a busy lunch, the manager came into the break room and requested myself to again clean up the lobby. Someone's had an accident in the bathroom, he added, in the men's room. I am on a 10-minute break, one of two granted myself for the time frame of the shift I'm working. Seated nearby me is Ernesto, a friendly enough character. Though born deaf, he is an excellent lip reader and generally works up front taking orders. Of Latin origin, Ernesto, who refers to himself as she, is a flamboyant individual who, though fairly well equipped with verbal language, will primarily refer to herself in the third person, a form of expression that did not sit well with the skill set of McDonald's management at that time. Tracy Chapman, in the background, laments over her own state of affairs. And I cannot but somehow feel that I understand, that is, get her lyrics a little more at a time like this one. You should complain, Ernesto tells me, lighting a fresh cigarette from the communal staff pack of Newports kept near the napkin dispenser. She inhales, and after a generous and complicated pause, turns to me and pointing with her cigarette. She watches. She sees how they does it. She is animated now, stirred up, and her words don't come off as easily as they often do when she's on the floor. That is, help countless people in the manic fairy line alone that has been her exclusive domain, hers alone for years. I listen quietly, and hearing her broken English gather up the courage needed to go to the manager's office and stand up for who I am. Just say it, baby, say it, Ernesto calls out to me as I leave the break room. She knowingly winks at me. Just say your piece and be done with it. Excellent advice that I value and continue to this day. Just say it. The small office is near the break room, and the door is open. A bottle of Jovan Musk and an extra large diet soda on the manager's table. I'll clean the lobby, I begin, but this is the last time I'm cleaning up vomit from the urinal. I can hear my words, but they sound far away, like someone else is saying them, and I'm listening in. Thomas, the manager, looks up from his paperwork, schedules, or whatever manager bullshit he is working on. What did you say, Cone? Referring to me, as he always does, by last name only. I start to repeat myself, and am harshly interrupted. I heard yous the first time. He is flustered. What I mean is, you will do what you're told. I'm in charge here. The office is equipped with some kind of closed circuit camera linked to the restrooms. One can watch the general coming and going of guests, as well as their behavior, up to, but not within the stalls themselves. Four of these small monitors are displayed in the on position, recording the given room's activity during open hours. Looking at the screens, I answer Thomas in a cool manner, shaking my head. It's just not going to work out then. I'm done being singled out for this bullshit. Someone has started the cassette player from the other room. There's silence, that is, except for Tracy's song, and the automatic fryer's repeated signal to toss or shake or agitate the frozen potatoes in hot oil. Standing there a moment, eye to eye with Thomas, I know this is a big moment for me. Ernesto has clocked back into work. She passes by the office and, making flamboyant use of sign language, a lot of hands and sharp gestures and faces before departing to her resident station up front. Her actions, I know, are directed at Thomas, and I find it possible now to back out away from the cubicle and also clock into the rest of my shift in grill. I did not clean up vomit, puke, or any feces that day. And as life would have it, only save that special task now for the ridiculous menagerie of young and old cat and dog at my own home. Funny, this life. I would soon leave that job, McDonald's, and the many goony, friendly folks I had worked with that summer. Moving on, not far down the street, to Pioneer Square and the Grand Central Bakery as dishwasher. A real turning point for me, mid-college. I quickly graduated to barista, as in only a handful of espresso machines and were in the city then, and later began what would be my own future, would become my own future, a lofty career of fine baking coupled with mediocre pay, and the satisfaction present in every loaf, croissant, and brownie I helped create. And the feeling somehow I could be someone, and that I belonged. Thank you. That was a special one to put together. I've said a lot of words, and I'm going to close with a little poem from last summer, from late in the summer, as we were trying to figure out our beautiful but ridiculous restaurant, the Wild Mermaid, at the north end of the island. I became the resident bartender, one of two employees there, and I remember that I, as not really a bartender, as a baker, I kind of brought down some poems and some words and some tomato plants just to make it look pretty. And this little poem I had printed out with my help of my friend Lori from Vashon Print and Design, and it's called Indian Summer, and it has a little bit to do with there's a mother in it. And so, without further ado, this is Indian Summer. And so, here with the jellyfish that shimmer blue, green, brown in the hopeful water, the sun feels far away again, warming my back slowly in the August wind. Providence. A baby seal barks for its mother. And again, I'm reminded that time is short. Rejoice, schools of silver fish, an alder leaf around my head, the dry salt water again on skin. Rejoice. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.
If the smoke wasn't attacking you, it was directly attacking me.
Oh, that was nice. Thank you so much. And I got a Lori inclusion.
Thanks for the shout out. Is my face on right side up?
It is on the right side. It looks beautiful. I love it. Woo! That was great.